Aloha. My name is Lono, and I'd like to welcome you to my little piece of paradise here high up in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. I'm so grateful to be able to live where I do. We have water on the property that's spring-fed, that I'll never have to worry about water. I've got a stove that I'll never have to worry about cooking or heating my place. Lots of wood out there. I've got a garden that supplies all of our foods. We have a freeze dryer. We've put lots and lots of food up to store for emergencies in the future. We have livestock operations where I have chickens, eggs, meat chickens, rabbits, and we have neighbors that produce grass-fed beef. So we're set here. But the problem is many of you are not. And unless you've been completely separated from the reality of our world, you must realize that if you're a patriotic American, if you believe in traditional American values, if you believe in our Constitution, if you believe in the things that our ancestors fought and died for, then you're an endangered species. There is a Marxist revolution going on in this country under the name of progressive globalism or leftist progressives. There's a variety of names that get attributed to it, but it's responsible for the people that are currently raising havoc in our country by parading through the streets, by looting and burning buildings, by demanding people raise their fists in solidarity with the Black Lives Movement and all of that stuff. And you need to understand, if you don't already, that Black Lives Matter, by their own admission, this is not my invention, this is what they say about themselves, is they're a Marxist movement. And Antifa is a Marxist movement. And they believe in overthrowing the United States government by force. And that's what they're proceeding to do in our cities. And I think it's important to notice that they're being enabled by Democratic mayors and by Democratic governors in these cities. And these people are people who were put in power by billionaires like George Soros, who have financed their campaigns. And again, this is all factual information. I'm not making any of this up. George Soros himself has said that his primary purpose in life right now is to destroy America. And he's financed the elections of people that are district attorneys in these cities that are letting people go after they've been caught looting and burning and beating up other people. So we have a full-fledged Marxist revolution happening. Now, when I say democratic, they are democratic, that's the party, but there's a lot of the same people in the Republican Party. And I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. I'm a Hunist. Actually, I'm a Kahuna priest. And that word is probably unfamiliar to most of you. If you've heard about it at all, it's the big kahuna who's the surfer, or, some kind of a slang term like that. But let me share with you something that you may want to know about. I use the word huna because it's a Hawaiian word, and what it means is the isness of things. There's no English word I've come across that will connote the same idea as easily in one word. Huna means the secret or sacred knowledge of that which is real. And a kahuna is a keeper of that knowledge. That's what those words mean. A hunist is a person who wants to be in touch with the isness of things. What is? And that's all founded on the same idea that science is founded on. And that is that there is a certain reality out there, a reality with the big R. It's the way things are. It's the isness of things. It's how the world is built. And then there are all kinds of little r's. I have a little r. You have a little r. Every human being has a little r, a little reality. And the difference between that little r, whether it's mine, yours, or anybody else's, and that big R is called pain in some way. Now, sometimes this can get really obvious. I can believe in my reality, my little r, that all I have to do is stand on the top of a building or the top of a cliff, and if I just want to enough, if I just have enough faith, if I just can muster up that energy that puts me in harmony with the principle of flight, why, I can spread my wings and I can just fly over the city or fly over the canyon, as if my arms being outstretched in my desire, that faith is enough to carry me. And what a wonderful thing that would be. And I can believe it, I can want it. It doesn't really matter how much I want it to be that way. If I jump off of that cliff or off the top of that building, I'm going to go splat. That's the big R. And that's what I mean when the little r and the big R are not in the same place. Now, in reality, I can fly. But to fly, I have to get in touch with the reality of what gravity is about. I have to get in touch with the reality of aerodynamics. I have to get in touch with the reality of chemistry and its role in creating an internal combustion engine or a jet engine that will provide power to an aircraft that uses the principles of aerodynamics. And when I get in touch with all of these realities with the big R, I can put together a tool, a machine, that will allow me to fly. But it's not going to happen just because I stand on a cliff and I say, I want to, I really want to. I have faith. It doesn't work like that. That's not how the world is built. And this acknowledgement the world is built in a certain way is the whole foundation of science. And so Hunists are essentially scientists. In my world, I'm a biochemist, and I'm very deeply involved with science. I have invented water treatment systems that are they're the ultimate water treatment system in the country. They're recognized as that in the world. We've been producing them for 22 years. They render water microbiologically safe without water waste. They have redundancy. They take out all the chemicals that are so dangerous in water. They take out fluoride. They make water taste great. And we can replace the cartridges, and every time we replace the cartridges, we can replace them with cartridges that contain the latest state-of-the-art in water treatment. I'm not trying to sell water treatment systems here, but I'm telling you that science makes that possible. Reality, understanding reality, makes that possible. And so I've made a living on those water treatment systems for almost 25 years now. So science deals with Huna, the reality, the isness of things. The closer we can get to the isness of things, the better things work, the better our lives work. Well, there's an isness to things regarding government, regarding the science of human interaction. And I want to share that with you right now. From a scientific point of view, a real point of view, the only way we're going to be able to overcome what's going on that wants to deprive us of our freedom, this socialist Marxist movement. And we're going to have to come together to do that. But to do that, it's like Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu, the master war strategist from China of several hundred years before Christ, made a very, very cogent statement. He said, those who do not, and I'm paraphrasing broadly, but it's the same idea, those who understand themselves and who understand their enemy can never be defeated. Those who don't understand themselves or their enemy will never win a battle. And that is absolutely true. So what about society? What about society? How is society structured at the isness of things? And it all begins with the idea of God. And as soon as I say that word, a lot of people out there who are scientists are going to want to disconnect. And that's unfortunate, because there is a God, a real God that you can intuitively just look at our world and see, yeah, that's true. But unfortunately, too many religions for too long have relegated God to this anthropomorphic being who's out there somewhere, who gets offended when we don't behave properly, etc., etc., etc. He's male, and they disconnect from all of that, and understandably so. None of that is real. And one of the things about reality, and I want to quote an ancient system of wisdom called Huna. This system of wisdom, not just the word, but there's an actual system of wisdom based on Huna. And basically it says, belief is necessary only for that which is not real. Think about that. Belief is necessary only for that which is not real. Once discovered, that which is real can be recognized, and it works reliably and flawlessly. Once discovered, that which is real can be recognized, not believed, not thought about, recognized. Recognized is a very important word that too many people in this culture overlook. Recognize, to re-know that which you already know deep down inside. That which is real can be recognized. Why? Because you're a part of it. You're made out of that reality. And because you're made out of it, you can recognize it when you encounter it, even though you've never formally looked at it that way in this life before. And the second test is, it works reliably and flawlessly. So is there some definition of God that we can come up with that meets that test? And the answer is yes. And it's more obvious and more simple than most people can often think about. But it's as simple as this. God is all that is. There is an all that is. There is. You are. And you're connected to your parents, to this earth, to other people in your society, to the earth is connected as a planet to the moon. It's part of a solar system. The solar system is connected to a galaxy. The galaxy is connected to many, many hundreds of thousands, millions, hundreds of millions other galaxies. Your body is made out of elements that were forged in the explosion of stars untold billions of years ago. You're connected. You're connected to all that is. And that all that is, I submit to you, the only definition for the word God that can possibly make any sense. And that all that is includes not everything, not only everything that is in the world of form, like stars and planets and chemicals and atoms and electrons and energy and light and all of that stuff, but all that is in the world of spirit. There is a spirit world out there too. Your consciousness is a part of the world of spirit. Courage, integrity, truth, all of those things are spiritual concepts. They can't be weighed, and you can't measure them using objective means, but they're quite real. And matter of fact, they're really the only thing that gives meaning to life. So God is all that is in the world of spirit and in the world of form. And if you are, you and every part of your life is made out of that God. And that's the genius of America. That's why America is an exceptional country, because American values were formulated by our founders, who recognized that this idea of the divine right of kings was not real. It was contributing to huge amounts of pain in our world. And our founders did away with the idea of the divine right of kings, which was kind of a conspiracy between the kings and the church at that time. The church said, oh yeah, kings have all the rights. And the king said, yeah, we have all the rights, and I'll tell you what you can do. You have no rights except the rights I give you. And that's been the nature of most governments on earth throughout human history. And it was in America that we threw that idea aside. And as the Declaration of Independence states, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Remember that concept of recognizing reality? Truth is self-evident. That's why the Founding Fathers chose those words. Truth is self-evident. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights. Now, we can get into arguments about Thomas Jefferson holding slaves and all of that stuff. And here's another principle of HunaWisdom. The credential is always in the message, never in the messenger. And one of the ways that Marxists like to be able to argue for their point is they want to diminish the value of truth by pointing out the people who espoused those truths didn't live by them all the time. Yeah, that's true. But that doesn't mean anything about the message. The message is its own credential. The message is true. All men are created equal. We all come from this all that is. We all come from that place. The all that is. And we all come here on equal footing into this world we call our life. With sacred space. That's what the Hawaiians and the Native Americans call sacred space. We come here with sacred space. Our founding fathers called those things inalienable rights. You have a right to speak your piece. You have a right to defend your life. That's inalienable. It comes with the territory. And many of these rights were enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. Now, it's important to make a distinguishing comment here. Your rights don't come from the Constitution. They come from God. The Constitution was written to remind people of what those rights are. And it enumerated some, and it said, just because we've enumerated these doesn't mean you don't have other rights. We get our rights from God. And that's what makes America exceptional. America is based on a bottom-up form of government, where the rights are inherent in the people, we the people. And those rights are things that if I have, I can delegate them to other people that are called a government, because I can allow a government to do things for me that it's more difficult for me to do myself, like national defense. But I could only delegate the rights that I have. So I have the right to live in my home in peace. And I therefore have the ability to delegate that right which I have to a police department. I have a right to keep my home from burning down. So I can delegate that right and the authority that it contains to a fire department to do that for me. But you know what I can't do? I can't tell other people what to do for medicine. I don't have that right. I can't tell you whether or not you should smoke marijuana. I don't have the right to tell you whether or not you should drink alcohol. I don't have the right to tell you whether or not you should smoke cigarettes. I can discourage it. I can point out problems associated with it. I can tell you that I don't support it and I think it's a bad idea, but I can't prevent you from doing it because it's not my right. And if I try to do that, I'm invading your sacred space. And that's the Founding Fathers' definition of immorality. I don't have the right to invade your sacred space just because my notion of what is right, my reality, my little r, differs from yours. I don't have that right. So the government can only have the rights I have. If I don't have the right to tell you whether or not you can smoke marijuana, the government can't have that right. So all of the laws that were passed regarding that, and this was primarily a Republican thing, are immoral in Huna, the isness of things. They're immoral. And as a result, they don't work. And never have worked. They create more problems than they solve. So this is not a Democratic thing. This is not a Republican thing. This is a principle thing. What is the isness of things? Reality with a capital R. Now, it just so happens that right now, most of the anarchists and the people running through the streets burning down buildings are being supported by Democratic politicians who are out of power and they want to get into power. And for me, that's a big enough reason not to vote Democratic. If they're willing to support roving bands of people going through cities, burning down businesses, looting businesses, I'm in small business. When these people break in your windows and steal your inventory, they destroy what you've worked a lifetime for. That's not okay. That's a violation of my sacred space. And if there are Democratic mayors and governors out there that are supporting that kind of thing, then they are complicit. And I will never vote for someone who is complicit in that kind of behavior. Regardless of what you think of Trump. This is not about Trump. This is about principles. And it's important that you honor the principles. Trump will go at some point. If he doesn't go in 3 months, he'll go in 4 years after 3 months. It's not about Trump. It's about principles. And unless we have a family that stands for those principles and make those principles front and center into our world, we're going to have tyrants in charge of our world. What these people want is to go back to a top-down system of government where the kings have all the rights, or an elite, technocrats, bureaucrats, people who work for the World Health Organization, government at some level. They're the ones that are going to have the rights, and they're going to tell us what we can do. We can't do that. We can't have that. You're not going to want to live in a world that's based on that kind of thing. You're not going to want to live in a world where you have to have some kind of a certificate that says you've been vaccinated before you can have anything to do with going into a business or even getting electricity off of the grid. You don't want that, and you don't want it for your children. That's as oppressive as anything that's ever existed in this world. The Chinese Communist Party is an example of what it's like to live under a top-down system of government. Millions of people were rounded up by Mao Zedong and disappeared. How would you like it if that was your mother or your father or your child or your wife? That's what you've got ahead of you if you allow this top-down system of government to get started. It won't work. And the idea that that's progressivism is a joke. That's a regressivism. That's regressive. We're going back to a form of government that existed a long time ago in most of the world for a long time, and it was overthrown because it was so oppressive. But today we have a whole lot of young people, a whole lot of academia, and a whole lot of people that are on the payroll of the people financing this movement that want to take us back to it. And that's a pretty exclusive club. The people who are paying for all of this revolution and the ideas behind it are an exclusive club. They're billionaires, and they own many of these international businesses. They own people in the Republican and the Democratic Party. They own district attorneys and judges, as well as politicians. They own the media. So that's why we don't get news on the media anymore. What we wind up with is propaganda. There is news available out there. It's available through independent news channels that regularly publish on places like YouTube. But the second that they start publishing material that's real, that threatens the narrative of these billionaires, they get cut off. Censorship is always the rule of totalitarian governments. These people are being censored, and they're screaming about it, and they should. There's nothing that we can tolerate in the way of censorship. It's arrogant. It's assuming that people are too stupid to be able to evaluate the truth for themselves. Most people, if they're presented all of the information fairly, will come to correct conclusions the vast majority of the time. It's when they are not presented all the information fairly, when that information is slanted and spun, that's when the problems begin. And right now our news media is not that way. And evidence of that is, and I'm not a proponent of Fox News as opposed to CNN, but there is something interesting to observe. If you look at Fox News and you look at CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times and the Washington Post and these other media, they aren't reporting the same thing. If you look at CNN and the New York Times and MSNBC, you'll come to the conclusion that all of these protests going on all over the country are peaceful protests, mostly peaceful. And the reality is that these people are burning down buildings, they are committing arson, they are looting, they are threatening people. Rand Paul just got assaulted when he left the RNC convention and would have been killed, he says, had he not had the protection of a few Washington policemen. The video is out there. You can look at it for yourself. Why is it that one group of media will attempt to paint a picture that is completely unrealistic? That's called propaganda. Why? What is the purpose of propaganda? It is to promote a narrative. And that narrative is not in your best interests. You can know that because they're trying to keep the information from you. If you knew what was really going on, you'd make changes. You'd be incensed. You wouldn't put up with these Democratic mayors and governors that are allowing this to take place. If it was your business that was burned, if it was your relatives that were being beat up in the streets, you would demand change. They know that, so they won't report it. That's a principle thing. It's not a political thing. It is taking place in a political context right now, but there's a principle involved, and that is that truth matters. Honesty matters. And whether it's the Republicans that aren't telling you the truth about something or the Democrats that aren't telling you the truth about something, it is not okay. We have a right to know the truth. And we have that right because we have a responsibility to make choices in our lives that are important to our well-being. And if we're not given the truth, then we can't make those choices as well as we would otherwise make them. And that's a violation of my sacred space. My vote is sacred. I don't want my vote being diluted by ballots that have been sent out to somebody's cat or dog or somebody who's an illegal alien in this country who has no skin in the game. As a matter of fact, I think that the vote would be best reserved only for those people who have skin in the game and who are directly affected by the vote, and not just given to people so that they can vote benefits for themselves out of the U.S. Treasury. That's not okay, because I'll be the one who has to pay those benefits, and that's a form of slavery. Another principle. Taxing the rich to give money to the poor is a form of slavery. It's no different than the slavery that happened back at the, before the Civil War and afterwards on the plantations. It's the same thing. You're taking from people who have earned it to give it to people who haven't. And that's immoral. That's why slavery doesn't work. And it doesn't work whether the slave is a white man, a black man, or anything else. Our rights come to us from God. And it's not about your gender. It's not about your culture. It's not about your race. It's not about your sexuality. It's not about any of those things. Whatever the flavor of human being you are a part of God. And every part of your life is a part of God. And if we do not honor every other person at that level, we're not on the path that's going to lead to peace and prosperity and abundance. It's just that simple. So we have a bunch of billionaires out there. And these billionaires really want a Marxist movement. Because in a one-world government, guess who's going to be at the top of that government? They are. And that's very orderly and neat and tidy for them. They can make people take vaccines, and they can make people limit the number of children that they have, and they can make people do all of these things that will create this utopia that they carry around in their mind. The problem is they're violating everybody else's sacred space in the creation of their perfect utopia. And that's why it will never work. And it'll create more pain and difficulty than we've ever had. And if we give that power to them, if we just sit back and allow them to do what they're doing, let's go to Davos and go to the World Economic Forum, and let's fly our Boeing 747s and our jetliners there. Look how impressive we are, and look how everybody is supposed to pay attention to us. And it's a bunch of baloney. These people are no more important than you, and they have no right to decide what your future is going to look like for you. None. Zip. Nada. No right. They can make suggestions, but they can't stack the deck. And that's what's going on right now. They're stacking the deck. So that at some point you're going to find yourself under the heel of a one-world government that you can't do much about, short of massive revolution that's going to involve bloodshed and pain at a level that we haven't seen in generations. Do you want that? Do you want that for your future? Right now, I'm very concerned about the next election. I think that the Democratic Party is gearing up for a revolution. They are already talking about not accepting the results of an election. They're talking about mail-in voting so that there can be widespread voters fraud. And that's what it's about. Let's not kid ourselves. It's not about convenience. If a person can get a driver's license so that they can drive, if they have to present an ID to get food stamps, there's hundreds of things you have to have an ID to get. They can have an ID for that. Why can't they have an ID to vote? And why can't your vote be protected? It's sacred space. Your vote is sacred space. And when people want to dilute your vote, when somebody wants to fill out more than one ballot, that is erasing your vote. That is a primary violation of your sacred space. We can't permit that. One person, one vote, and that vote needs to be able to be tracked and verified. So, what's the solution? We have this huge movement out there moving towards a Marxist socialist government. Well, there's only one answer, and that's we've got to come together as a family. We have to come together in a way that is organized, correct, grounded in reality, and we have to have as many people as possible be a part of that family. And that family I propose today is the Eagle's Nest family. And I'm going to be producing more videos now in the future that will talk about this family and why it's the unique solution. It's the only medicine for this pain that can possibly exist. And it begins with the idea that this family is founded on the idea that there is God, and that God is defined as the only thing it can possibly make sense, and that is the all that is. And we look at everybody as a part of that God, as a divine being. If we define being a part of God divine, then everybody is a divine being. Man, woman, child, all lives matter. Not just black lives. All lives matter. It's an extremely important concept. And from that will descend an awful lot of other ideas that you'll say, oh, I get it, that makes sense. All of the Eagle's Nest family, all of everything that I'm saying, you don't have to believe. It's plain common sense. You can recognize that it's true. No belief is required. Think about it. If I honor everybody as divine, a black man, a white man, a brown man, an Asian man, or a woman in any of those flavors, a person who is gay, a person who is straight, a person who is transsexual, a person who likes to cross-dress, a person who is anything in terms of the way they prefer to express themselves. They're still made out of God, and they deserve divine respect. So it's extremely important that we form this family. And it's going to stand for certain things that proceed from that idea. And you're going to want to know about it. Because if you don't stand for this family, if you won't be a part of it, then you're going to be a part of the problem. And to the extent you're a part of the problem, you're contributing to what's eventually going to be the loss of the freedom not only of ourselves, but of future generations. That's a big statement, but it's absolutely true. We have to overcome these people, and we have to prevent them from getting a foothold into the future. And this definition of God, by the way, is a definition that even an atheist can support if they've got a good heart. Because they have to admit there is such a thing as the all that is, and they have to admit that each part of that all that is needs to honor and respect every other part of that all that is for their essential nature. Only the secular religions of progressivism and Marxism, because they have a dogma, and that dogma doesn't include you being much more than a sheep. And that dogma is something that has to be defeated for the sake of your children, for the sake of us all. So please stay tuned to the next video where we talk about the nature of the Eagle's Nest family and why it is uniquely suited to this purpose. And then I'm going to give you a challenge, and I'm going to ask you to inform everybody that you know of the Eagle's Nest family and tell them how important it is to join, and give them the link to the website so that they can look at it, or the videos on YouTube so that they can start tuning in. If everybody out there will tell just 2 or 3 other people, it's only going to take a little bit of time for everybody to be a part of the Eagle's Nest family, and that's the only thing that's going to have the power to stop what is happening in our country today. All religions have to be a part of this. Just like America makes room for all religions, the Eagle's Nest family makes room for all religions. Now, I'm a Kahuna priest, and Huna for us is this set of wisdom principles. And we have aspects of our way of looking at life that include prayer and a lot of other ideas that many of you would consider religious. But this family isn't that religion. It includes all religions, Christians, Jewish people, Muslims. The only requirement is that they can respect the idea that all of us have sacred space, and that's where our rights come from. So in that regard, my religion is a branch of that tree, just like your religion, if you're a Christian as an example, has to be a branch of that same tree. And there's nothing else out there right now in the world that's doing that. Oh, by the way, this has to be worldwide, because the problem we're suffering here in America is happening everywhere else. It's happening in Europe. It's happening everywhere else. These billionaires are multinational. These corporations that they run are multinational. These news media outlets that they control are multinational. And we have to be able to present a unified front and say, no more. We're not giving you any more of this power, and we're not going to accept it if you think you can just take it. We have to be that strong, or we're not going to survive. So thank you for your attention today, and I offer you my blessing in the form of aloha, which is a Hawaiian word that at the deepest level means I respect and I will honor your divinity. The marriage of life and light. Aloha. Marriage, light, lo-ha. Life. The marriage of life and light. When I say aloha to you, that is like saying that I respect your divinity, because that's what you are. You're the marriage of life and light. Let's start having the aloha spirit for everyone. Aloha.